You hear it all the time, right? Governments should be run more like a business. They should be lean, efficient, streamlined. But what if that big push for efficiency has a dark side, a hidden cost? Well, today we're going to unpack some really eye-opening research that shows a surprising trade-off right at the heart of the modern welfare state, a clash between efficiency and our right to justice. And that leads us to the big question that's going to guide us through this whole explainer. Is a more efficient government always a fairer one? I mean, on the surface, it sounds like it should be. But as we're about to see, the answer is way more complicated than you'd think, and it has huge, real-world consequences for everyday people. So to understand how we got here, we need to look at this very popular and honestly very smart-sounding idea for how to run a modern government. It's called the regulatory welfare state, and at its core, it's basically a hybrid model. So instead of the government doing everything itself, it sets up a system where public and private groups work together. Think about unemployment benefits, where a private company might handle the job search side of things, or home care for an elderly parent, where a nonprofit is the one providing the day-to-day help. This quote right here from the book Reinventing Government pretty much became the mantra for policymakers everywhere. The idea is simple. The state's job is to set the course, make the rules, and decide on the goals. That's the steering. But the actual hands-on work, the rowing, that can be done way more efficiently by private companies. So why do this? Well, the arguments for it were pretty powerful. The thinking was it would fix all the classic problems of big government bureaucracy, it would use market competition to keep costs down, and it would push people to be more responsible for themselves. I mean, on paper, it really looks like a win-win. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. This whole shift, which was designed to make things better, created this massive, unintended problem, a justice gap. What used to be a really simple, straightforward relationship, the citizen and the state, suddenly turns into what these researchers call a complex web of accountability. All the lines of who's responsible for what just get tangled and blurry. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. The old way? Simple. You had a problem, you went to the state. End of story. The new way? Oh man, a citizen might have to deal with a private company, then a local government agency, and maybe even end up in 2 different kinds of courts, all for the same issue. It's a total maze. And this confusing maze directly attacks something absolutely fundamental: our access to justice. And look, this isn't just some vague philosophical idea. We're talking about the actual practical ability for you to get your case in front of a judge when your rights are on the line. If the path is too complicated, that access just vanishes. Let's make this real. We're going to look at a case study from the Netherlands that shows exactly how this plays out. This first one is all about what happens when an employee gets sick and needs benefits. Okay, so under this new system, a single issue over sickness benefits can literally explode into 2 separate legal battles. The employee might have to sue their boss in civil court, where fees are higher and they have to prove everything. But at the same time, their employer could be fighting the government agency in a totally different court, where the employee is just a third party. And the craziest part? These 2 courts can come to completely opposite conclusions on the exact same facts. It's a legal nightmare. The researchers who studied this had the perfect phrase for it. They called it Kafkaesque procedural knots. And that just nails it, doesn't it? It's confusing, it's frustrating, and it's basically an impossible situation for someone who's just trying to get help while they're sick. All right, let's look at another case. This one is about social support, something as personal and basic as getting help to keep your home clean. And this one shows a much more subtle, sneaky way the system can let people down. So some local governments, in their rush to be efficient, started making decisions using this really vague, goal-oriented language like this. On the surface, who's going to argue with that? You are entitled to a clean house. Sounds great, right? Ha! But here's the million-dollar question. Who gets to decide what clean actually means? Is that 1 hour of help a week? Is it 4? Who makes that judgment call, and how? And there's the trap. That power to decide gets passed down to the private company doing the cleaning. They're the ones who define clean, often based on what fits their budget. And because the official government decision was so vague, the citizen basically has no way to appeal it. They're just stuck. And we're not talking about a few isolated cases here. Get this. Research found that a staggering 1/3, a full third, of municipalities in the Netherlands had improperly cut off home care services using these tactics. This was a systemic problem, showing how that chase for efficiency was actively taking away people's rights.
So let's zoom out for a second. Why does this all matter so much? Well, it cuts to the very heart of what justice is supposed to be, a safety net for everyone in our society. When you make it this hard for people to get to court, some really damaging things start to happen. The rules get fuzzy. Nobody's sure what their rights are anymore. The government starts to back away from its core duties. And all of this can lead to a deep-seated distrust in the system, because the promises being made can't actually be enforced. And in the end, the people who need that safety net the most are the first to fall through. And here is the bottom line. These policies, created in the name of efficiency, can accidentally tear down the very accountability systems that are supposed to keep them fair. The courts are our check on power. If people can't even get through the courthouse door, that entire check and balance system just breaks. Which brings us right back to where we started. That push for an efficient, business-like government is powerful, and it's appealing. But this research forces us to stop and ask a really tough question. When we demand all that efficiency, what level of justice are we as a society willing to put on the line? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.